Let's just stay friends. My ex really needs me right now. Those words hit me while we stood outside her place in that dimly lit parking area. I'd actually been carrying something special in my jacket. A car key. I'd been working overtime to afford for weeks, but hearing those words, I just quietly pushed it deeper into my pocket. I met her gaze and calmly said, "Okay, I really do wish you the best." No drama, no pleading, no desperate questions about why this was happening, because deep down, I already understood. She seemed almost relieved when I said that, like someone finally setting down a burden they'd been carrying. What she didn't realize was that she'd just lost the final shred of my respect. I simply walked to my vehicle and left. Sometimes the most peaceful moments come when you finally stop fighting reality. Back then, I figured that chapter was closed for good. I was wrong. Several months down the road, late one evening, she showed up outside my home, completely soaked, makeup running down her face, with a group of people behind her capturing everything on their phones. Emma and I had shared 3 years together. I make my living behind a camera, constantly traveling and searching for the perfect shot, not chasing relationships. She worked with numbers, an accountant who valued stability and order. We seemed to complement each other perfectly. I brought spontaneity to her life. She brought consistency to mine. Or so I believed. Our time together felt uncomplicated for the most part. We rarely argued about finances, loyalty, or where we were headed. She appreciated my laid-back nature. I valued her grounded approach to life. But there's something about being too comfortable. It becomes nearly invisible until something more exciting catches someone's attention. That excitement arrived in the shape of Ryan, her former boyfriend. He suddenly reappeared, now supposedly successful. Designer suits, luxury sedan, talking constantly about his personal transformation and newfound success. He began contacting Emma regularly, expressing how much he missed their connection and how much he'd matured. Initially, she was transparent with me about everything. She described him as someone going through difficulties who just needed support. But I detected something shifting in how she spoke about him. She started discussing him like some kind of repair project rather than someone to keep at arm's length. Then the explanations began rolling in. Extended work hours, helping with entrepreneurial strategies, catching up with old acquaintances. Part of me wanted to probe deeper, but I held back. Not because I was blind to what was happening, but because I wanted to see if she'd remain truthful without pressure. Turns out her honesty had a deadline. We were at our regular spot one evening, this cozy little restaurant we always went to. Her phone screen lit up with a notification. "Tonight for dinner? Really need to discuss something." She quickly angled the phone away like it physically hurt to look at. I said nothing. Just continued with my meal. But internally, something final and heavy took root in my chest. I understood where this was heading. I'd actually been organizing something meaningful for our upcoming anniversary, a small silver vehicle she'd been wishing for. She'd casually mentioned it once, saying, "Perhaps someday when we're more financially secure." I wanted to surprise her, not to show off, but because I genuinely thought it would improve her daily life. Strange. How you can be building a future with someone who's already mentally checking out. The following evening, she asked me to come by because she needed to discuss something important. Her voice sounded practiced, almost scripted. No tears, no visible guilt. She simply delivered that opening line. Her words validated everything I'd been quietly sensing. She wasn't leaving because circumstances forced her to. She was leaving out of curiosity, wondering if something better existed elsewhere. I recall experiencing this unusual sense of clarity in that moment. Not devastation, not rage, just confirmation. Everything I'd silently worried about was accurate. So I smiled, tucked that car key back into my jacket, and simply said, "Okay, I genuinely hope this makes you happy." Then I left, and honestly, for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was losing anything valuable. Weeks went by, and I kept expecting the emotional collapse to arrive. But it never did. I continued working. I processed photographs. I actually slept more soundly than I had in years. Sometimes real peace arrives simply by releasing what wasn't meant for you. Everyone assumes heartbreak means sobbing alone in darkness, but sometimes it's just someone standing in an empty lot, quietly, understanding they were never actually the problem. Following that evening, I didn't fall apart. No intoxicated messages, no emotional meltdowns, no driving past her building hoping to catch a glimpse. I genuinely moved forward. I threw myself into my work with renewed energy. I accepted more assignments that required travel, natural landscapes, community celebrations, portraits of individuals who still had life in their eyes. My photography started gaining recognition. An art space in Portland reached out about hosting a small exhibition they titled Stillness. It exceeded all attendance expectations. It's interesting, I could capture tranquility in images far easier than capturing heartbreak. Occasionally, shared acquaintances would bring up Emma, unsolicited, but always with that particular tone suggesting they thought I secretly wanted updates. "She appears content," they'd mention. "She's involved with that entrepreneur, Ryan, you know, her ex." I'd just smile and share what I genuinely believed. The flashiest things are frequently the emptiest, and I'd leave the conversation there. For months, she didn't cross my mind until suddenly I began hearing rumors. Ryan wasn't the person he'd presented himself to be. Apparently, his businesses were actually unpaid debts and incomplete schemes. He'd borrowed money from investors with no intention of repaying, opened credit lines using other people's identities, and had a pattern of relocating whenever consequences appeared. Within months, Emma had emptied her savings covering Ryan's financial disasters. She fought to maintain her apartment and employment. Eventually, the strain became overwhelming. Her home was gone. She left her position, and people close to her noticed injuries she couldn't adequately explain. I didn't experience satisfaction learning this, just a sense of inevitability. Those who pursue illusions inevitably stumble over reality. By that point, I had my own life to concentrate on. Months later, while shooting a travel feature in Oregon, I encountered Leah, the editor managing the assignment. We invested countless hours examining photographs, discussing captions, and playfully debating over coffee. Gradually, something developed between us, subtle but undeniable. She was intelligent, refreshingly direct, and completely opposed to unnecessary drama. During our first meeting, she examined my weathered camera and commented, "That equipment has witnessed more genuine life than most humans ever do." I laughed. It was the first genuine laugh I'd experienced in quite some time from someone who wasn't attempting to repair something damaged within me. We collaborated more frequently after that. She'd provide honest feedback on my work. I'd tease her about overusing descriptive language in her articles. There wasn't some dramatic declaration or movie-like moment, just two individuals who didn't feel pressured to prove anything, consistently showing up without pretending perfection. And somewhere between those road adventures and late-night editing marathons, something clicked. I didn't miss Emma, I missed the version of her I'd constructed. In my mind, when I mistakenly believed love meant endless patience rather than honest clarity. Then one evening, my phone lit up. A contact I hadn't seen in months appeared. "Jack, I know I messed everything up. Ryan left. He deceived me about everything. I've lost everything, but I know you still have feelings. Please, can we meet? You still love me, right?" I stared at those words for a solid minute. Not with anger, not with nostalgia, just exhaustion. Then I responded, "I cared for you once, but that version of you no longer exists." I sent it, blocked the contact, and set my phone aside. No second guessing. No remorse. Because sometimes closure isn't about having a conversation. It's about finally understanding. You don't owe anyone. Justification for walking away from turmoil. The incident occurred roughly 3 months afterward. One peaceful evening, Leah had dozed off on the sofa, her book resting on her chest. I was working on some image editing when aggressive banging shook the entrance. Initially, I thought perhaps a delivery mishap or an inebriated neighbor. But then came the shouting. "Jack, open this door right now! You coward!" I went completely still. That voice, strained, broken, too recognizable. Emma. Opening the door revealed something that felt surreal. She stood there absolutely drenched, eyes frantic, cosmetics streaming down her face, and 3 people behind her with phones raised recording. I could detect faint camera sounds and someone whispering, "Don't stop filming." Emma pointed directly at me, her voice shaking with fury. "You abandoned me! You destroyed my life! This is your fault!" For several seconds, I'd just observed her, not shocked, but genuinely stunned by how far she'd deteriorated. This same woman who once obsessed over matching decorative colors for her living space now stood at my entrance, hurling accusations like a complete stranger. I kept my voice low and simply asked, "What exactly are you doing, Emma?" She moved closer, eyes unfocused and glossy. "You believe you're superior now? Sharing your perfect photographs while I'm suffering? You left me to struggle, Jack. You broke me." Her companion started yelling too, attempting to provoke a reaction. Their devices capturing every possible angle. It became immediately obvious what this was. A calculated setup. A desperate performance. Designed to paint me as the antagonist, in whatever narrative she planned to spread online. Leah appeared beside me, completely composed, her voice unwavering. "I'm contacting the authorities." Emma released a hollow, almost manic laugh. "Perfect. Let the whole world witness what kind of person he truly is." But I remained motionless. I simply stood there, hands casually in my pockets, watching her with the kind of composure that infuriates unstable individuals. When I finally responded, my tone was level, almost compassionate. "You weren't abandoned. Emma, you abandoned yourself the instant you chose deception over authenticity." For just a fraction of a second, those words penetrated. I witnessed it register in her expression. Then the facade snapped back and she resumed screaming, striking my chest while her friends continued documenting. Leah maintained the phone connection until officers arrived. When they did, I stepped back and showed them footage from my security system. Crystal clear evidence of her trespassing, creating a disturbance, attempting forced entry. The officers examined her, then me. One released a weary sigh, obviously familiar with this kind of situation. "Ma'am, you need to depart immediately. Returning here will constitute trespassing." Emma's lip trembled. "He's fabricating this. He ruined everything. You don't comprehend." But nobody was convinced. Even her companions appeared uncomfortable now, gradually lowering their recording devices. The officers guided them away from the property. As she was being escorted from the entrance, Emma turned back one final time, eyes burning with something between devastation and rage. "You'll regret this decision, Jack. You'll regret refusing to rescue me." I remained still. Didn't speak until the patrol vehicle's lights vanished down the road. Then I whispered primarily to myself, "No, Emma, you're already the one living with regret." I closed the door, secured the lock, and stood in that silence, the sound of rain replacing where her chaos used to exist. Leah gently took my hand and asked softly, "Are you all right?" I nodded. "Yeah, for the first time I genuinely think I am." Following that evening, life finally settled into calm. Several weeks afterward, Leah and I gathered our belongings and departed the city entirely. We relocated to a quiet coastal town in Oregon, nestled between misty cliffs and towering pine forests. I established a modest photography studio, nothing elaborate, just clean white surfaces, natural lighting, and the scent of ocean air drifting through partially opened windows. No clients obsessing over social media trends, no artificial expressions for online validation, just natural scenery, community portraits, and the kind of tranquility I'd forgotten was possible. Leah continued freelancing as a travel writer, documenting hidden pathways, regional creatives, and coastal weather patterns. Sometimes she'd position herself near the window, laptop balanced on her legs, hair windswept and messy, while I processed film in the studio's back area. We rarely discussed previous experiences. We didn't need to. Real peace doesn't require constant explanation. Months passed. The studio generated sufficient income to cover expenses, and somehow that felt like genuine success. I removed most social media applications, not from bitterness, just complete disinterest. Once you've existed within someone else's chaos, silence becomes the most precious thing imaginable. One morning during early spring, while organizing my desk drawer, my fingers touched something cold, a single car key still attached to its original key ring, the identical one I'd intended to present to Emma that evening, back when I still believed she represented my future. I rotated it in my palm, the metal reflecting light like both a reminder and a ghost simultaneously. Leah entered holding 2 coffee mugs. "You look like you've discovered hidden treasure," she joked. I smiled. "In a sense, yeah. I purchased this once for someone who couldn't comprehend love. Now I'm thinking it might finally begin a new chapter with someone who genuinely does." She observed me for an extended moment, then placed the coffee down, eyes gentle. "I'll ensure you never regret giving it away again." And somehow I understood she meant every word. That evening, we took the vehicle and cruised down Highway 101, the ocean stretching to our right, the sun spreading golden light across the horizon. For a while, neither of us spoke. The radio played softly, waves crashing against rocks below. At one point, Leah glanced toward me and asked, "Do you ever think about her anymore?" I considered it carefully. About Emma's voice, her turbulence, the version of myself that attempted to repair what was never my responsibility to fix. Then I shook my head. "Not really. I think about who I was when I cared for her, and how much distance I've traveled from that person." Leah smiled, reached across, and intertwined her fingers with mine. The highway curved ahead, and for the first time in forever, the future felt transparent and clear. Emma disappeared following the incident. Information eventually circulated: outstanding debts, psychological struggles, another failed relationship. Her online presence vanished overnight. Some individuals felt sympathy for her. I didn't hate her, but I didn't pity her either. I simply allowed it to be. Letting go isn't weakness. I mentioned to Leah one evening as we secured the studio, sometimes it's the only method to preserve your dignity intact. Healing isn't about revenge or erasing memories. It's simply discovering peace.